Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. I can't wait for you to meet my good friend Joe Grimm. We used to work together in the journalism world many years ago. He was a recruiter for the Detroit Free Press, and I, of course, been a long-time journalist working at several newspapers around the state of Michigan. Well, today he is a visiting editor-in-residence at Michigan State University, and we get to talk about our Catholic faith and not just journalism. Although, of course, we're going to talk about journalism as well. He and his students just released this brand new book. It's called 100 Questions and Answers About U.S. Catholics. I think you'll find it fascinating how the book came together and what the purpose is and how it relates to our pillars. It's all coming up next on the show. First, let's tell you more about this podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to United in Mission, One Heart and Mind, a podcast from the Catholic Diocese of Saginaw. I'm your host, John Gonzalez, the Director of Communications here at the Diocese. Inspired by Acts 4:32, we believe that by coming together, one heart and one mind, we can strengthen our faith and live out our mission as disciples of Christ. Now, we have three pillars here at the Diocese. It's number one, to love and support our priest. Number two, to form disciples on mission. And number three, go after the lost sheep. Under the leadership of Bishop Robert Gruss, this podcast will explore our pillars and the many ways we are united in faith, service, and love. Join us as we share stories of hope, inspiration, and the power of community in our diocese. You'll find this episode, videos, events, and many more resources on our website. Just go to saginaw.org. Now, let's get to the show. And as I said, I'm talking to my good friend Joe Grimm. We've known each other for a lot of years, and right now he is joining us live. Joe, how you doing? That's good to hear. Like, as we said,
I'm
he
doing
is
well
the
today, John.
Series founder and editor of the Bias Busters series. He's also the visiting editor-in-residence at Michigan State University's School of Journalism. That's how we know each other, through the journalism world, and it's going to be good to be able to catch up with you on what's going on in the journalism world and why you started this series. And this one took me by surprise. It shouldn't have taken me by surprise. It is 100 questions and answers about the U.S. Catholic faith, or about U.S. Catholics. It's put out by the School of Journalism at Michigan State University. Go green. Aren't you supposed to say go white? Go white, yeah. See, we at Central Michigan, we just say
That's
fire
right,
up.
go
and everyone's
white.
Good with that. Real simple. I know. We're excited to have you here on
Everybody's
the
got that.
podcast, United in Mission, One Heart and Mind. And I understand, Joe, that you're also kind of a member of our diocese as well.
I am. I live over on the shores of Lake Huron in beautiful Port Sanilac. And we've had a wild weekend here with a blues fest and pancake breakfast and other
Summer on the lake.
concerts.
Well, you know me through my journalism,
Summer, man,
my secular
on the lake.
journalism world, and that's what I do. Go to different festivals and events and restaurants, and it's just a part of what I do. I haven't stopped doing that, but now I get to work here at the Catholic Diocese of Saginaw with Bishop Gruss. And this whole podcast really is about showing how we live out our pillars, this mission that we're on, this diocese on mission. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we have three pillars. One, to love and support a presbyterate on mission, love and support our priest, and then equip people to go on mission, and then go after the lost sheep. And it's kind of funny because your book, 100 Questions and Answers about U.S. Catholics, could fit into every single one of our pillars. You're going to learn a little bit about our priest. You're going to learn about how to equip yourself. And that's what this book is, right? This book, 100 Questions and Answers, will equip you. You'll learn more about your faith. If you're one of those cradle Catholics, that just show up to work, show up to Mass on Sundays and the holidays, you can dive into the Catholic faith. But let's talk a little bit about why you started this series, because it's been around for a while. You've got some different topics. I don't know what your first one was on, but let's talk about the series of the Bias Busters, and then let's talk about how you came up with doing or focusing on U.S. Catholics.
Well, what I like to talk about with students especially is the why. Why is there a Bias Buster series? And the reason is, all of us know people we would like to know better, community there, right? But we're afraid to talk to each other because nowadays everybody is so easily offended. I'm afraid I'm going to say something that will either offend you or hurt your feelings, so I don't ask the questions. I just go along and we don't talk about things. So these 100 question guides get in there and they say, okay, here are 100 basic questions as proposed by members of the group, and here are the answers. So you can go out there and talk to your neighbor, talk to your friend, talk to your coworker, and you'll have the basics covered, and then you can get on to the 1,000 questions that come after those first 100. So we started answering questions. We started with Arab Americans because people had a lot of questions. And what we've been doing lately is we've been doing a lot of books on faith groups, because interfaith groups especially like to talk about things and ask each other questions. And so what we're trying to do is be a
I love
facilitator
that.
for
And
people
what
to
year did
have
that first
conversations
book
with each
come
other.
out, Joe?
Well, the first one came out when I was way back when I was at the Free Press. It came out before 9/11. And of course, after 9/11, then everybody said, I have a lot of questions about Arab Americans now. So we go way back to then. And then there was a big gap until I got to Michigan State in 2009. And I started up this series at Michigan State and turned it into a series. Before then, it had just been one book. But we've now done 23 guides in the series on faith groups, demographic groups, occupational groups such as veterans and law enforcement officers. And we're even getting into areas like we're just finishing one up on people who stutter. There's a lot of questions people have about people who stutter, but they won't ask them because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or they say, gosh, I should probably know the answer to this. So it's a real handy way to get to know
Well,
your
Joe,
neighbor,
has
get to
been well
know the
received. I
people
know
who live
by
around
not
you.
only in media circles, but just for people in general that want to learn more about a topic. First, let's talk about journalism a little bit, because as you know, you and I have connections going back to the Free Press days, and you know my lifelong career as a journalist, and
Yes, we
I know
do.
that we respect each other, what we do. We both have a passion for journalism, which is a good thing. But take me through how this series is put together. Is this a classroom project? Are students volunteers? How many students do you have involved every year to do this?
This is a mostly undergraduate and a couple of graduate students at Michigan State. We're going to begin one this fall with 20 students, which is the maximum they'll allow. And the students sign up for the class, I think because they want to help publish a book, and in some cases because they're very interested in the group we're talking about. I take any reason. If you want to be in the class, we'll find something for you to do and something you can learn about. But for the most part, they want to publish a book, and it takes a lot of work, but the format is pretty straightforward. And when you think about it, this idea about answering questions that people ask is very similar to the catechism. Who made me? It begins with a question, and then it goes through a series of questions and answers. In the Jewish faith, same thing. They learn a lot by asking and answering questions. So this format appears to be very
So,
compatible
I'm
with the
really
way
curious if you had
many
about
people
20
learn.
students working on this particular book, which is about the Catholic faith and about U.S. Catholics. What percentage of the students were Catholic?
Yes. That's interesting. I don't keep statistics on that. I don't ask. Sometimes I will recruit. Now, I had some very devout Catholics in the room, and I had Catholics of different stripes, some who were conservative, some who were more progressive. And I love that because we're talking about U.S. Catholics, which is a very diverse group of people, although folks who are not members of the faith might put all Catholics into one box or category. That's not really the way Catholicism works in the United States. There
Right,
are a
that's a
lot
good
of
point. I
different
mean,
kinds of
a lot of
Catholics.
us forget that you have all different types of Catholics and where they're at in their journeys as well, right? And that's a good point to make. So you didn't really keep track of where they are, but
Yes,
how
yes.
did you, being a journalist, we're both journalists, being a journalist, how did you fact check the information? Because I'm assuming they took a question or a category and they worked on it either individually or as a group, or several students might have tackled a few questions. And we'll get to some of the questions in a minute.
Well, sure. Well, the process is meant to make sure we don't have students answering questions. Their first assignment is to read one of these guides to see how they're put together. Their next assignment is to talk to 3 to 5 people who are members of the faith and say, what questions do you think people need answers to? What is it that bugs you? What statements do you hear that should be corrected? What kinds of things would we be answering? And so we'll get about 120 questions, and we'll winnow it down to about 100. We're going to wind up there, but we need to get closer. And so the questions come from members of the faith. For this guide in particular, I sat down with a couple of the sisters at St. Mary's Church in Port Sanilac, and I said, what should go into this guide? What should we be asking people, or what should we be answering? So the questions don't come from the students, and then the answers don't come from the students either. We're journalists, John. You know that we don't know anything. We don't know anything until somebody tells us. So we can't get the answers from each other. We have to go to the authorities. So in this guide, we wanted answers to come from different places. Yes, we wanted to have, clerics on here. We wanted to have people who are active in the Catholic community. We wanted to have women in there as well as men. And so we went out in pursuit of who the people would be to answer the questions. And in a third step, to ensure that we're not just putting out what students think, we had them read the guide and critique it. And in that way, we can get people telling us, no, you have this. I had a very ferocious critic on this. You might know her, Patty Montgomery from the Free Press. She is a lifelong Catholic, a multi-generational Catholic in her family. Some of the people in her family used to build churches. And she has been to Rome as a reporter several times and written about several popes. And she saw what we had, and she said, whoa, back up. You are not getting the whole story here. You are not having enough in here about religious women. So we went and we talked to some religious women and showed them what we had, and they suggested some of the material that goes in here. So all of this content is not by students so much as it's through students. And so that's what we're really going for. So I can have a classroom full of people who, I tell them, in fact, that if you don't know anything about this group, that's your strength, because you might have some questions of your own. But I'm not that interested in your questions. I'm interested in the questions of the people who we're writing about. And once you get people going, they have a lot.
Some of the questions that you have in here, we'll talk about the categories in a second, but what should someone wear to Mass? Good question. What version of the Bible is typically used? Another great question. I'll have to tell you a story someday about a conversation I had with a coach at a Catholic high school, and I realized through the conversation that he wasn't Catholic. I assumed he was Catholic. It was about the Bible and how many books are in the Bible. And I'm like, wait a minute, he doesn't know.
Well, even if you talk to people who consider themselves to be practicing Catholics, there's a lot of fundamental, foundational stuff they don't know or will have to go look up. A lot of it comes from what they learned from their family at their mother and father's knee, or what they learned in school, or they came in later in life. Actually, some of the people who know the most about Catholicism are those who went through religious formation as adults and don't rely on what do I think I remember from when I was a little kid. So these books are often read by people who are members of the faith and say, oh, I didn't know that. And in some cases they say, well, that's not what I think. And that's totally okay. In the country, the Pew Research people just came out with a study not too long ago that said more than half the people in the country are closely related to or know very well somebody who is Catholic, even if they're not. And sometimes this difference in faith practices keeps people apart, and we're trying to bring them together.
Joe, a few of the other questions here. How is Catholicism different from other Christian religions, which we just kind of talked a little bit about there? What was the Protestant Reformation, which I think a lot of Catholics don't really know because they don't spend a lot of time and thought about that. And then what is the role of saints, which I think also is something some Catholics understand better than others?
Yes, the saints question is one of my favorites because it's kind of controversial. I'm Catholic, and my grandparents were Catholics, and some of them were big on saints. Bury a statue of St. Anthony in the yard if you want to sell your house, or pray to a saint if you're going on a trip, even if he was downgraded to a mister. Have a saint help you. My name is Joseph. I have 2 boys. St. Joseph had one boy who was a handful. So sometimes when I was parenting, I would pray to Saint Joseph. I don't worship him, but I'm asking for a little bit of advice or intercession. Saint Joseph, can you have your son send me the grace I need to be a better father? So the big misconception non-Catholics have about saints is that we worship saints. And John, we really don't worship saints. They're not divine, they're not God, but they're inspirational. And sometimes we hope maybe if they have an inside track, they can ask for a little help for us. But I think they're really good for helping us meditate and think about our actions and be a little more introspective. A similar question that really is big with non-Catholics is, who is Mary? Why is Mary? Mary is like three of the five major church holidays, aside from Easter and Christmas, are about Mary. So they think Mary must be really something. Is she like a super saint, or is she godlike? And again, the answer is, well, she's very important because she raised that. No, Mary is not divine, and we revere her, but we do not worship her. And so
It
we
does,
had
and
to
you guys do a
explain
great
that,
job
and I
with this.
hope
Some of the
that
categories in the
comes
book,
through to people.
you break it into, well, we'll get to the glossary in a second, but beliefs, sacraments, worship, practices, identity, milestones, hierarchy, the Pope. We'll talk about the Pope in a second. Women in the church, which you mentioned, myths and stereotypes, demographics, families, love and sex. You tackled some of the taboos, education, abuse scandals, social issues, money, and politics. This is a great list of, you just want to go down and go like, oh, I definitely want to talk about milestones or the hierarchy. But let's talk about the Pope for a second, because this book was already ready to go to print, and then what happened? We get a new Pope. Joe Grimm, what did you do?
Well, here's the problem with me. Although we could print a book like this pretty fast, I don't want to print any book until it's ready. And this book had a lot of problems. It was missing some of the controversial subjects. It did not explain the role of women in the church very well. It did not explain the difference between nuns and sisters. And some of our critics, including a couple of sisters, said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 back up here, buddy. You got to get this in about what are women doing in the church today." And so we were putting these things in, and we were dealing with the abuse. Now we had a wonderful gift in that Pope Francis was making a lot of news in his last 2 years. He was going to Canada and North America and talking about boarding schools. He was apologizing to people for sins committed by the church years ago and saying we have to make amends for this. We did not act in the right way. So he was making many of the items, the answers that go into this guide in his last 2 years. The other thing he was doing was that he was choosing people, elevating people to be cardinals. A lot of them. So many of them that you'd say, wow, about 80% of the people who will choose his successor were chosen by him. How will that work out? So, as we're going along, taking years to get this book done, the book was being written in time. We put the book in to go to press. Pope Francis had been sick and then he was recovering. We put the book in. We said, we better hurry up on this. And he went from recovering to passing away while the book was in production. So we pulled it back. We changed the foreword in the book. We added a subtitle. We changed the subtitle. And so the book came out within a month after we had a new pope. And so we were able to be right on that cusp. And it's because we took so long to get this book right that it backed it up into a time when
Joe,
major news happened, and we were
yeah,
able
the
to
timing is
reflect some of
incredible.
that.
It's a great story.
Of course,
I know
now there
that
needs
you've
to
not
be
had
a
a
new
chance
book.
to meet our bishop, Bishop Robert Gruss, who I hope to make that happen for you, because I think you will love him. He's very, I mean, he's so pastoral and a great
I
shepherd
would
for the
like that.
flock here in our 11 counties and 56 parishes in Saginaw. But the Saginaw Diocese does kind of have a little imprint in this book, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I live right now. I'm in Port Sanilac. I'm half a mile away from St. Mary's. I went over to St. Mary's and talked with two of the sisters there about we sat in the social hall, and I took them a little something with their morning coffee, a little pastry, and asked for their help. And they were very kind. Most people are kind. When you tell them that you're going to write a book or produce a book about their group, you'd think they wouldn't be happy about this. They say, what, who, you? And students? What? what we'll do that when we get around to it. But people are very kind, they're very open, and of course they get a chance to see what we're coming up with to say, no, no, you don't have that quite right. Go back and try that again, or here's the way we say that. So they were big on it, and I had a really interesting thing. When I got the books, I finally got the books just a couple months ago, and I wanted to take them to St. Mary's to deliver copies to the people who'd helped us early on. It was pouring rain. I parked my car. Oh boy, am I going to be able to find Sister Maria Inviolata? Well, right then a sister is running from the convent over to the church under an umbrella. So I followed her into the church. It's her, it's Sister Inviolata. I think I'm delivering books, but she points to the wall behind the crucifix, which is now covered with scaffolding, and the background painting, which had been covered up with white paper for 20 years, was down. And there was an artist up there restoring the church. And I'm happy to say it was completed in July, and it brought back this beautiful thing that I remember from a long time ago that a lot of people I thought it was gone forever. I thought, oh, they've just covered it up, but they hadn't. They were protecting it, waiting for the time when they could restore it, and it's been restored now. It was kind of
That sounds great. I'll have to definitely get over there
kind of a miracle
to see it. So, Joe, did you grow up vacationing up there?
I started coming up here when I was in about fifth or sixth grade, going to the Catholic Youth Organization camp along Lake Huron, and we would walk about 3 miles from camp to St. Mary's and go to church there. Not very often, maybe once during our 2-week stay, and so I remember it from then. And then years later, I went to Brother Rice High School in Oakland County. I met this cute girl from Marion High School right next door. She had a place, her family had a place near St. Mary's on the Huron shore. Well, we got married. We've been married 48 years, and we live in that house now.
That is incredible. So you found a way to just kind of keep it all coming full circle and in staying true to the Catholic faith. You know, Joe, this book is obviously, it takes a lot of love and energy and time to put together any project, right? And then when you involve students, it takes it to a different level. But you've always been you've had a career of being, like we said earlier, a passion for journalism and also a passion for passing it on to young people. Tell me a little bit, where does that come from you?
Wow, I used to be a young person. Let's see, I have to think back to that maybe. I think it's got to come somewhat from those days. Now that you mention, I never thought about this, but being at that Catholic Youth Organization camp taught me a lot about a good environment that involved young people. I was one, and the counselors and teachers who worked with them. So I think it was very natural for me to work with young people as I got older. And in fact, I just got through with a 4-week program I do at Northwestern where I was working with high school students who do journalism. And I just like the communities that the older people and the younger people can create together. So I love teaching. This is the only class I teach at Michigan State anymore. I asked if I could stay on and teach this class, and they said, well, if you don't think you're finished yet, yeah, go ahead. So we're doing it still. And I love the energy young people have and the ideas they have. And I notice that as the church evangelizes and tries to bring back some of the people who have left or their children, it is focusing on the youth. And that's happening in the United States among U.S. Catholics, and it's coming straight from the top. The Pope is saying, this is our great hope. We need to work hard to be relevant to and to listen to.
I know
you're
on the right track, so, and I've known that for a long time.
I think I'm on the right track.
We should also mention that Bishop Hurley writes the foreword for the book, and he also mentions Bishop Ken Utner as well.
Yes, and Bishop Hurley was great. He's a good writer. He responds quickly. I think
I'll tell you a story sometime about the day he showed up at the Grampus Press newsroom to have a meeting with our editorial board. So that was fun. No, I wasn't, because I was good. I was at the time just the entertainment.
Oh boy, I hope you weren't in trouble.
Into big social issues, but well, Joe, There's so much more to talk to you
Okay.
about. I really would just love to spend more time. But overall, what does this book mean to you? What does this book mean to you?
It tells me as much as you think you might know, you can always learn more. And you can learn it from a lot of people. And you shouldn't take your faith, your community, or even what you think is your knowledge for granted. All those things should grow. And so it's been a great experience for me. I'm glad we got this out finally, and we're going to keep on making these guides that help
Joe
us
Grimm, we really appreciate your
know
time
our
here. I
neighbors
think, well,
better.
lastly, for me, what I would love to see happen, especially as it pertains to being a diocese on mission, is that I could see, Joe, parents, grandparents picking up this book and maybe passing it on to their children or grandchildren that may have fallen away from the church a little bit, or maybe a brother or sister in their own family, because it has to be about families. It has to be about not only bringing people back to church, but then also evangelizing and keep growing the church. So to me, that makes sense, right? Go out and buy this, for a gift for every one of your grandkids, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a grandkid who's 8 years old. He is in a couple of days going to be starting school at a Catholic school in the Chicago area, and they love the academic program there. And I took them a copy of this book so he can be right in step with some of his
That's
peers who
fantastic.
have
Joe
been
Grimm, we appreciate your
in
time here
Catholic
on
schools right along.
United in Mission, One Heart and Mind. Joe Grimm is the series founder and editor for Bias Busters. He's also the visiting editor in residence at Michigan State's University School of Journalism. We really appreciate you being on the show today, Joe. That was going to be my last question, but
John,
good
where
question.
can we get
You
this book?
answer that for everyone.
The whole series, 23 guides now, is all available as an ebook or a print book on where else would we buy books but on Amazon. If you just go to Amazon, look for this title.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joe.
or
We'll
for
talk
the
to you later.
Bias Buster series, you'll find the whole thing. Thank you, John.